Did you ask? They believe in one God, which makes sense to me. They don't believe in 3 in 1 gods, or they don't believe in multiple gods, or they don't believe in idols. So
a lot of people do believe that.
No, I'm saying when you yourself were to ask these questions, you using your intellect will then be coming to a point where you will not have an excuse saying, oh, I didn't know, no one told me, because the information is now bombarded to you from everywhere. Look, you came to Speaker's Corner, guess what happened? You came to Speaker's Corner, information came to you.
Yeah.
You didn't come to the information came to you from us. Information is always being passed on to us, whether we've been bombarded with information passively or actively.
Okay,
always.
I understand what you're saying.
But if it was a 90-year-old woman or a man in a home who have no information because she or he doesn't look into the internet or have access to a library, doesn't have a copy of the Quran and so on, it's totally different. Because how much of the information did they have access to? You can only be judged, right, with the information that you've been accessible to yourself. Like we said about the intellect is also there. So if that individual using the intellect realize I can't worship a tree or a monkey or an elephant or a human being, or God is a trinity, whatever, then you already see that these people in the day of judgment, they'll be in a positive light. Why? Because they are coming closer to the understanding of who God is. That's how much the intellect can arrive to. Your intellect cannot come to the conclusion about that God is this, everything. There's a limitation of intellect. There's a role that intellect can play, but it cannot answer all your questions. Yeah? But intellect can then also, at the same time, reject many of these concepts about God. Yeah? So it might not affirm all of them, but it can reject a lot of those false concepts of God. That's where then when you look at the revelation will confirm your intellectual thinking, intellectual guidance, and then say, yep, I accept, I submit, I surrender. Because you are the only one worthy of worship, no one else. That's why the process of accepting Islam in our tradition, do you know what it is? The first one is of negation. You have to negate nothing worthy of worship. La ilaha. Unconditional, that's it. There's nothing worthy of worship. So imagine everything, like nothing. Man, woman, tree, flag, nation, pop star, football star, celebrities, nothing worthy of worship. And then you affirm, but the one and only true God. That's the process of accepting Islam. So there is this role where intellect and the guidance plays hand in hand. No wonder God didn't just leave with our intellect only. He sent prophets and messengers and gave them guidance too in the form of scriptures.
Okay, but the thing is, you're saying that you're basically saying that everyone's intellect, if they're exposed to the teachings of the Quran, everyone's intellect should automatically think that's
I didn't say everyone. I said the sound intellect. Sound.
Sound intellect. Or so if I consider myself someone who has sound intellect, my intellect should automatically tell me that this.
You can ask yourself.
My point is this: you were brought up, or I don't know but if a lot of the Muslims on this earth today were brought up in a Muslim family, they were brought up being taught those values their whole life. I've been brought up maybe being taught different values my whole life. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not an individual with sound intellect, but my sound intellect might still tell me that everything in the Quran is not correct and is not something I should follow. So how do you...
Just to expand on this, say someone who worships an idol and says, look, I use my intellect all the time. That's why I got a good job, I got a good friend or a husband or a wife, and I have all this properties and money and successful. They will say I'm using the intellect. But using the intellect soundly in the matters of the reality, in the matters of your belief about the Creator and so on, have they been using it? This is what we demonstrate here, that's not the case. Yeah? If someone is really sincere, truth-loving, and uses the intellect properly, even though they worship an idol, after discussion and understanding and reflection, they will say, yeah, it makes sense. Why they will say that? Because that's the sign of the sound intellect. you'll see many people, they'll say, yes, it makes sense not to worship an idol, but this is my religious tradition. Or I try to focus on it because I can't imagine God in any other way, so I have to concentrate on something. It's a focus point. So they're trying to justify it. But if you really delve into it, any belief system which is not in congruence or in conformity or in harmony with the true belief system, your intellect will reject it. Polytheism, tritheism.
There's so many people that, there's so many people that believe so many other things then, isn't
So you're
it?
basically saying, why is our truth more truthful than someone else?
Because
I mean, what proves us more than everyone else? Why?
Basically, I'm like, I don't understand the idea that of someone. So what if I don't have sound intellect? What if I'm someone that's if under your belief?
Very good question. Very good question. No, very good question. Very good question. So if your intellect is somehow incapacitated, meaning you don't have the ability.
So you're saying, are you basically saying everyone?
No. You have to hear me out. All right. Either someone is totally unable to use their intellect. There are many people like that. Okay? It could be a medical condition, for example. If you're unable to, then you are not accountable. If you're totally insane, clearly you cannot use your reason whatsoever, you are not accountable. There are many people in the Islamic tradition understanding of things, the pen has been lifted. They cannot be accountable because they are not able to use their reason and intellect. But the difference is, if you have a person who has the ability but does not use it, they will be questioned on why did you not use it? Did they not come to you? And they will say, yeah, but we didn't use our intellect. Then they will have no excuse. Because if you had the ability to use your reason and you do not use it, you will be held accountable for that. Because if you had used it, you would not have believed in such and such and ended up in such and such worse destination. That is the Quranic teaching. If you have the ability and you haven't used it, then you are accountable for it. Because God didn't give you a brain just to find who's the best beautiful girlfriend or a wife, and that's it. There is a higher purpose of our mind, to find out the reason why here we are in this cosmos. Because I may not have been here in this reality. There are millions and billions of people. Why me as well? Does it matter if I didn't exist? Nothing will change if I didn't exist. But why am I independent of existing? Because I am important in God's creation. I have a reason why I'm here. That means I need to find out why am I here, where I came from and where am I going. If I didn't use my intellect for doing this, then I cannot have an excuse in the day of judgment saying, well, I was too busy with my studies and with my work, with my pastime, with my football, with my soap operas, whatever. It would not be an acceptable excuse.
Okay, but the thing is, so if I'm brought up with my father is teaching me this is the way to live your life, this is how people live, and that's based on Christianity, or that's based on nothing, that's just based on his experiences in the world. And then at the age of 30 years old or so, or at my age, someone shows me a Quran and that conflicts. What's in the Quran is conflict with what I'm taught. How am I to if my intellect is formed by my upbringing and formed by what I've been taught my whole life, and that's what I see as logic. How can I then read the Quran suddenly
it's not a sudden process.
This is right. This is right.
Yeah. So it's not a sudden process. That's why the Quran tells us the importance of from the changing of societies and understanding of how people learn and educate themselves. Yeah. So Islam has a very much importance on education from the very young, where people are not conditioned to be totally brainwashed and that's it, you can't think. It makes people critical thinkers. And that's why if you look at Islamic tradition in the past, it generated generations of critical thinkers, scientists, social scientists, philosophers, biologists, astronomers, and they contributed to the world knowledge and civilization and technology. I mean, many of the stars' names are given by Islamic civilization astronomers. Why so? Because they didn't just stop there. They used their mind and looked into the horizons and look at the world that God has created. They did not occupy themselves with this small life and let me just go to work and come back to work and Saturday and Sunday just drink myself off and then wake up on Monday and then Monday evening a little bit okay, Tuesday much better, and Friday and like a cycle of slavery and servitude to this machinery of economics. No, Islam encourages people to develop, to grow, to perfect, to uplift their character. That's why one of the reasons the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet who brought this Quran, he said he was raised لِأُتِمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He was raised to perfect the nobility of character. You see? So you have a noble character. You're not someone born in debt, born doomed to die because someone else did something, but you are then to carry on developing, progressing, and improving yourself. And God tells us about these things that we are saying so common between all the religions, that He says He has guided us and showed us the two ways. إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. God says we have shown them, guided them in the two ways, whether they're grateful or ungrateful. Doesn't matter. He's given them two ways. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Successful are those who purifies it. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. The ones who are in loss are the ones who obviously has wronged it, totally oppressed it, totally damaged it, and so on. So we have this inbuilt understanding of good and bad already. So your parents,
you believe each person has something inside them that will tell them.
That's how we are created in our makeup. We are created to understand the good and the bad, the right and the wrong, and God shows additional guidance in the form of maybe in your sleep, maybe in your wakeful state, and then prophets and messengers comes with books and so on to guide you into this total infallible, what we call decisive guidance. Scripture will be the decisive matter. So when the guidance comes to us, we should accept it. That's what the Quran wants us. If you have a sound intellect, your sound intellect will question all the time. Why am I worshipping a tree? Yes, my parents told me, be good but worship a tree. Be kind but worship a tree. You will be in constant dilemma in your mind and your heart. How am I worshipping a tree? It doesn't make sense. It is not infinite. It is not independent. It is not absolute. How can I worship something which doesn't deserve my worship? Yes, I need to be good. I need to be kind. I need to be compassionate. So these kind of things, you have to differentiate between God, because there is two things in brief. The right of God over us and right of everything else that we have over us, or over everything that has over us, we have over them. So we interact with society, everything in society, whether humans, animals, the environment, the air, the water, whatever. We cannot pollute the air or the water or the land or the sea. We cannot destroy vegetation and crops and so on and so forth. We cannot create all these pollutions. We cannot harm the animals, other creatures, let alone human beings. We're not talking about human rights, we're talking about environmental rights. We're talking about animal rights. We're talking about vegetative rights or vegetation rights. But there is more important to that, the right of God. Have we given the right of God what is due to God? Have we surrendered and submitted our will with all our love, with all our intent, with all our sincerity and truthfulness to God alone, and says, yes, we will follow what you ask us to follow because you're the one who created us? Or are we become the slaves to our culture, our nation, our fashion, our friend, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, whatever? A lot of people have become slaves to their own desires. They go for taking the best watch, the best clothes, the best shoe, best this, best that, the most expensive, the most the branded. We have become fashioned to this. But all of this tells you there is something within your heart that tells you that there is something called reverence and gratitude and gratefulness and praise and glory that needs to be shifted to somewhere. We are only shifting into our items and celebrities and our friends and our leaders. God is saying, no, direct all of this, the ultimate praise and glory and thank belongs to the one who created you. If you were in problem, you're in trouble, you had an accident, she gave you to save your life, blood, kidneys, whatever, would you not be grateful to her? You would. It's a natural response. God gave you all of that. God gave you all of this, and yet should we not be grateful to God, thankful to God for what God has given? That is the essence of worship, where you are thankful for all that God has given you, and then you accept why you are here, and you follow the guidance, and you live your life accordingly. If you do that, then in the hereafter awaits for you success, bliss, joy, happiness, paradise, Jannah. If you don't do that, you become a rebel, an arrogant, stubborn individual, and say, I know it's true, but I'm going to reject it. That's what we're talking about, kafir. Yeah? Reject it, then the consequence is not going to be that you will go to heaven and paradise and place of joy and happiness. There's another place God has created for those arrogant, stubborn rejectors. That's the place of torment, place of punishment and suffering, where it will never end, forever and forever. And God reminds us constantly, don't go there. Don't follow the steps which will lead you to that place. Rectify yourself. Remove yourself from wickedness, bad actions, sinful actions. Once you do that, it will be easier for you then to accept the truth. The moment you're engulfed in so much badness or evilness or whatever, it becomes impervious for the good to come to you. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, it's like a place in our body called the heart. If you commit a sin, a black spot forms on it, like there's a black spot on it. If you do another sin, another black spot. Imagine people commit all these bad actions. The more you do, it becomes all these black actions. Eventually it becomes such that it becomes impervious, like there's no way guidance can go to your heart. Guidance wants to come, but because sin has made this heart totally impervious to any guidance. There are people who have made themselves like that. That is why God constantly asks us to reflect and get back in repentance. You know what happens? What happens? Just to finish this point, and we'll return there, God willing. When we when we realize this, is when something befalls us, a calamity, a suffering, we wake up. God help us, God save us. You're in a ship, the Titanic, and it's sinking. And you're saying, oh God, I'll be good, please help me, please rescue me, I'll be good. They don't pray to Santa Claus, Tony Blair, Superman, what are all the cartoon characters, Wonder Woman, Spider-Man, whatever. None of them will do, because they know this is a fiction of the imagination. None of them can help them. They return to God.
Then when you're about to die,
yeah. So God gave us this time period, says, look, before you die, you have to use your mind, your intellect, your reasons to understand His revelation, His guidance, follow it, accept it. That's very good for you. If you don't, at the moment of death, when you say I believe, it will not be accepted over. Pharaoh, you know the story of Pharaoh in the Quran. Pharaoh, he was chasing Prophet Moses, peace be upon Prophet Moses and upon all the prophets. He didn't want to believe. He declared himself to be the God most high on earth. And when Moses parted the Red Sea and crossed with his people on the other side, Pharaoh realized that. He was following it. He said, I'm going to follow it anyway. Supernatural, whatever. And then the water engulfed them and his army. And he's about to drown and about to die, and he says, God, I believe. God says, what? Al-an? Now? No. It will not be accepted. Believe at the moment of death, when the reality hits you, is not going to be accepted. So we have to get ready to wake up to this reality before death comes to us. And death can come to us anytime. There is no guarantee that you will live and I will live for another 40, 50 years. People die when they're young. People just suddenly they die without anything. You didn't have any medical condition, you just dropped dead. So it is very important that we constantly think about death. We remind ourselves about death before you go to sleep, for example, and then that will put you back onto the track and saying, what am I here then? What's my purpose in life? Then you'll realize that it is important for you to worship God and none else, because that's the only way you can be successful in the hereafter. Okay.
So my question is, so you were saying that sin leads to hell, right?
No, I was saying God does not punish anyone for someone else's sin. You are not guilty of a crime that you did not commit, and you are not punished for the crime that you did not commit.
Okay, so my response then, so the whole point is that the sin seems to be a bad thing for God, and that leads to hell. How would you agree with that?
It's not a bad thing for God.
It's an
Sin,
evil thing.
no. What do you mean a bad
sin-
thing for God?
So sin seems to be something that will lead to hell. Or is it a good thing? Is sin a
Okay,
good
let
thing?
me understand your point.
Yeah.
We are created for a purpose, and we are given a particular, say, code of life. Do this and don't do this. Let's simplify it. Do's and don'ts.
Yeah.
Okay? If you don't do the things that God says don't do them, so you're following God, do those things that God asks you to do, and you're following God, and you have the correct belief, then you become recipient of God's mercy of going to paradise. If you don't do those things, you rebel against God, then you are transgressing against God's, transgressor. So when you transgress against God, that act is called sin, transgression.
Yeah, I
That
know that.
has a consequence, where your consequence is not going to be paradise, a place of joy. It's going to be a place of torment, which is hell.
So let me, okay. So the whole